Honored to have Mr. Kenneth, President, Asian Electronic Sports Federation, who is also our Cyberport Advisory Panel member, to deliver a keynote on the advancements in technology that is redefining sport. Mr. Falk's presentation will cover the challenges faced during the 2020 pandemic, how sports and esports have been able to adjust, and most importantly, how these advancements will change the way we consume and we practice sport. Now, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please welcome Mr. Falk to join us. Mr. Falk, please.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's a real delight to be back here at Delft, even though it's Delft with a virtual twist. I'm sure you'll agree, 2020 has been a strange year for all of us. I, for one, have had to learn many new words and exercise that I haven't done since my school days. Social distancing, doom scrolling, work from home. I count myself lucky that I'm not corona divorced yet. I also found out that all my friends turned out to be experts in mass technology. I've never been Zooming before 2020, but the low point for me is when I had a glass of whiskey at home by myself, having a co-video party, Zoom drinking. That's it. It was time for change and reflection. One thing that COVID gave us is a chance to reflect, time to imagine how things would be post-COVID, how we can make things better, what we can do to nudge things a little bit further forward. Sports is my passion, and I reflect on how we change the sport landscape for the better. For all the years I've been serving the sports community, I haven't seen the sector being hit as hard as it has. But I always believe there are opportunities following danger, so we call 危機. I've been serving the Sports Federation Olympic Committee here in Hong Kong since 2009. So basically, I've grown up in the traditional sports world. In the Olympic boardroom, whenever I start talking about technology and esports, everyone looks at me frowning, bewildered, and have no idea what I'm talking about. At the same time, I also serve as the president of the Asian Electronic Sports Federation, the governing body of esports in Asia. So at esports event, I'm the guy from the Olympics, the one who is wearing a suit and a tie, who isn't really from the cool crowd. Anyway, this is a reason why I see there's a huge gap, especially an information gap, between the traditional sports world and that of esports. And I've made it my mission at AESF to act as a connector, a bridge, to bridge the divide. We've been very active in bringing Esports Association under the whole Olympic movement, educating national Olympic committees like Hong Kong about esports and how to get esports started in their respective nations and territories. Despite all the impressive figures we heard from Peter just now behind the esports industry, but at present, the level of disparity, competitiveness, and the esport penetration rates, for example, between Asian countries remain very large. Countries like China, South Korea, Malaysia, Indonesia, for example, and even here in Hong Kong, are ahead of the curve with a booming sector, a lot of competitions, while in some countries and territories, it really remains a blank void. So we believe for any sports, including esports, to grow healthily, to thrive, as a federation, we have the responsibility to help them grow, to help them level the playing field between developing and developed countries and regions. So one of the biggest initiatives that we did was to host the e-sport events at the Jakarta Asian Games back in 2018. Although only a demonstration sport, we insisted that our e-sport athletes are given the same treatment as athletes from any other sports, giving them a sense of pride, representing their country, nation, or territory. They all marched in carrying their national flag, and I believe we gave them a different feeling to that of other esport league competitions. At those games, just now as Peter mentioned, one of our Hong Kong athletes, Lo Jigin, even won a gold medal representing us. With that experience, I've seen a great interest from game organizers wanting to learn more about esports, and we're set to help many nations, Philippines, Vietnam, and many more, to host their own esports tournament within their city's wider sporting celebrations. So furthermore, I wanted to show that esports is not just about competitive gaming, but it's a new, exciting industry. So I invited 10 young volunteers from Hong Kong to shadow our operation team. They're not players themselves, but I want to let them see the workings of an esport tournament and the esport industry and how it can give youngsters a new career option. But my topic today is not just about esports, but it's about sports in general, how advancement in technology is redefining the sports world. To address this topic, I think it's better to stretch the timeline a little and have more of a perspective to look at how we got here. Honestly, I don't think we can talk about competitive sport without looking at the Olympics. And the sports, as we know it now, really started from the modern Olympics by a person called Pierre de Coubertin in 1894, a mere 100 years ago. And when we talk about the Olympic movement, we're basically talking about a whole hierarchy and concerted effort to promote sports through international sports federations, national Olympic committees, and various game organizing committees, so-called the rule setters. So on the face of it, the rules of each sport and the way we play it really haven't changed that much since this 100 years. But past technological advances have definitely had a profound impact on the sporting landscape we see today. First of all, technology has changed the way we train for sports. So for elite athletes, they no longer train by repetition. Science is what they turn to. Our local biking hero, Lei Weixi, has a host of equipment hooked up to her while she trains, measuring her muscle power, geometry, endurance, comparing her data to her competitors. She has access to altitude chambers to train and oxygen chambers to aid recovery. For the average Joe, technology has changed the way we engage with sports, but more importantly, giving a way to boast to our friends how many steps we've taken every day. It's actually a new way to look at health, new tools. Technology has also changed the way we consume sports. The first TV was invented in 1927, and the first TV broadcast of a sporting event followed a decade later, in 1939. It was a Columbia-Princeton baseball game at Baker Field. Needless to say, that technology innovation at the time changed the sporting industry forever. No longer is sports a pastime. It is now a business with broadcasters and advertisers sharing a piece of that cake. Take the Olympics, for example. It began as a charitable organization with amateur athletes operating with donations from individuals and governments. Now it is a multinational nonprofit funded entirely by broadcasting and licensing deals with an average revenue of over 1.4 billion US dollars. So technology has also changed the sporting gear and apparel business too. The global sporting equipment and apparel market is worth 407 billion US dollars in 2019, and is expected to grow at 7% per year. And because of technology, there's a reason to change your watch, your tennis racket, or your shoes, your clothes every year now. Technology has also changed how the game is played and how the rules are set. Remember when we were young, table tennis used to be a 21-point game. Well, since 2001, it's been the best of 11. Similar rule changes have been adopted by World Badminton Federation in an effort to control playtime to fit into TV, broadcasting, and advertising needs. And video technologies such as Hawkeye and tennis, virtually in every sport, there are video replay systems to aid with judging to make the game fairer. In gymnastics, Fujitsu has recently come up with an AI and 3D laser sensing technology to help support the judges in evaluating the athlete's techniques, taking the subjectivity of judging out of the equation. So thus far, technology has definitely changed the game. Sports has evolved from an amateur pastime to a full-fledged booming industry in over a little 100 years. So where is sports heading in the next 100 years? That's a question we want to answer. You know, with COVID, hopes might have been dashed. But as you know, the Tokyo Games have been postponed. So with that announcement, we were shocked. After all, only 2 world wars really caused the cancellation of Olympics. Then came endless reports of financial difficulties faced by Tokyo. According to Forbes, the extra cost on their balance sheet would be as much as $3 billion US dollars. So I said before, the Olympic and major sporting events have become huge business, but so has the cost of hosting these events. To put things in perspective, A typical summer game, 10,000 athletes arrive in the city for 2 weeks, competing in over 300 events, and a minimum 40,000 hotel rooms have to be available for tourists. Infrastructure is often upgraded to accommodate the games. In perspective, London and Rio spend about 18 to 20 billion US dollar, while Beijing and Sochi spend over 45 and 51 billion US dollars to host these games. Not only are costs the issue, it's also increasingly difficult for organizers to gain popular support, especially support from younger demographics. Modern sporting event models rely on broadcasting, and as a result of technological advancements, the way people consume entertainment is changing, and the preferences of young people are also changing. One thing that hasn't changed is the number of hours people have a day and how much time they have to consume entertainment. Sports, which is in a form of entertainment, is having to compete more and more with other mediums for the same screen time. How can we sports stay relevant and attractive in the new century? I believe we need to really think outside the box. You know, I could really feel this firsthand. Back in 2008, when Beijing hosted the Olympics, the whole nation was talking about it, and they were glued to CCTV5, the sporting channel. Fast forward 10 years, with a vast amount of internet contents in China, I feel that young people have less focus and less interest in professional competitive sports. I think it may be time to do a SWOT analysis for big events, for events like the Olympic. The Olympic definitely have many strengths and values, but I won't lay it out here. But we cannot ignore the threats and weaknesses for it to remain competitive and remain moving forward. For example, how to control costs, including efficient use of infrastructure, how to capture younger demographics. The way I see it, technology can be the answer. Can competition be conducted online, virtually, and still be fair? Can technology again change the way consumers pay for sporting entertainment? Can we attract younger spending individuals to the game? These are all valid questions. So COVID, while bringing the world's sporting industry to a halt, also in some way may have sparked a revolution and led to a quicker adaptation of technology in sports. In light of the pandemic, many IF, international federations, had to break away from their comfort zones and innovate to survive. I'll give you a few examples. World Rowing announced their 2020 World Rowing Regatta Masters. To quote their website, if your times are extra fast, your federation will be recruiting you for your country's national team. This opened new doors for talent recruitment and accessibility, opened the sport to the wider public through the internet. My wife, who's a diver, just received last night a notice about the world's first virtual diving competition. Yes, virtual diving, and yes, water is still involved. Divers will dive in their own pool, in their own country, but the dive will be recorded at different angles. It will be broadcasted, and judges will score accordingly overseas in the comfort of their own home, somewhat eliminating expensive travel and hosting costs, and of course, COVID risks. UCI, the world governor for cycling, announced the first UCI Cycling Esports World Championship, which is held on Swift, which is a digital training and racing platform. Around the world, 1.4 million so-called Swifters meet up to take part in virtual races. In essence, connecting professional bikers worldwide, forming a new biking community. Simulation sports, or esport games, are also gaining traction. Between January and April, Twitch reported its daily figures increasing by more than 83% to 2.5 million viewers, and estimate interest in sports simulations to be 2 to 3 times higher than pre-COVID. For example, FIFA, no one would not know of FIFA, the host of the Football World Cup, have launched the FIFA eWorld Cup and eNations Cup on the FIFA 20 platform. FIFA has further mobilized football associations, traditional football associations worldwide, over 200 of them, to participate in this global initiative. Even the world of F1, the sports which is not accessible by most people in the world, is hosting its fourth series of the F1 esports series, allowing more people to have the feeling of standing on the podium. I don't think we could not or ignore VR technology as well, which is set to change sports in many new ways. You know, I'm a big fan of skiing, but living in Hong Kong, it could be very hard. Meanwhile, the Hong Kong team struggles to identify and train skiers to compete at the highest level because of obvious weather constraints. This is also the bottleneck for winter sports federations as well. To increase their popularity value of their sports, they need better accessibility, which is restricted mostly by weather. However, with professional-grade indoor skiing simulators, some using VR technology to train professional athletes, imagine training, competing, and even doing qualification events at home. These can all be held online on a simulator. You can then greatly reduce the barrier to entry and increase participation of winter sports. I'll admit, these forms of competition technologies are still really in the infancy and will need to refine and tune, and there's a long way to go. But the way I see it is technology is not the inhibitor, but our will. Is the sporting world willing to change and adapt to new technology? In some ways, COVID did help. Like the TV back then, the internet, or specifically the way we use the internet, is also changing the way we consume sports entertainment. The medium has certainly changed. We are definitely seeing the Netflixication of sports broadcasting. Technology has allowed video streaming over the internet on a large scale. To give you a quick example, in 2008, 400 million people used the internet to watch the games. Fast forward 4 years, which is the London Games in 2012, 1.2 billion individuals did the same. NBA has also launched the NBA League Pass. Users have the option of different subscription models, tailoring the way they consume content. So in a way, it's a user chosen, not decided for them by the broadcasting station. In other cases, internet platforms have taken over. Amazon has beaten Sky Broadcasting to bid to show the ATP Tennis Tour in the UK. The same goes for the NFL League. Even a less well-known UK company called DAZN made headlines by paying $1 billion for boxing broadcasting rights and streamed over the internet. Sports used to be designed to accommodate TV broadcasting and TV advertisement. Just look at American football, basketball. This will really change in consumption behavior, lead to change in sporting format. I'm sure younger audiences may demand shorter, faster-paced game. 5-day cricket are gone. T10 is the new format, lasting only 90 minutes. Furthermore, with the development of 5G networks and new technologies such as XR, viewers may no longer be satisfied with just watching the game. With the viewpoints decided by director, choice of different viewership angles, simulations, player stats, or even virtual direct fans engagement may all be possible. Imagine once you put on your VR goggles to experience a football match, you get to walk around the virtual stadium. Advertisers on screen are tailored to your preferences. These innovations will completely change the business model for sports going forward. So because of time, I'll skip to really a conclusion. I would just want to mention one point. As a president of AESF, the question I get the most is e-sport actually a sport? And when is esports going to join the Olympics? Well, I think to look at e-sport in the way is a bit too simplistic. We shouldn't be asking whether esports is a sport, but rather be asking how technology can change sports, how it can help sports evolve into the next century. The way I see it, the snowball is rolling, and technology innovation will never stop. The only inhibitor are us, people or organizations who are afraid to change, afraid of the unknown, and afraid of making mistakes along the way. In this sense, esports should not just be competitive gaming. As I see it, it should be a wider adaptation of technology innovation within the sports ecosystem, which competitive gaming, such as LOL, Dota, PUBG, they're all part of a bigger sports ecosystem. And the second question, it will be very welcoming if esports be included in the Olympics, but that should not be the end goal. I know the IOC is watching this space closely. I personally sit on the esports liaison group established by IOC. But when talking about Olympics, we actually talk about Olympic movement. If esports can prove itself useful to the movement by addressing some of the problems the Olympic faces, then perhaps one day the world of traditional and electronic sports can merge. Because of time, I have to end here. Thank you very much for listening, and it's a great program, and I look forward to the rest of the day. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Fox, for your perspective.